Happy snow day, everybody, and happy afternoon. I hope you are enjoying your day so far. Just letting you know, for snow days, for algebra, there will always be something for you to complete online, whether you'll be completing the whole lesson like we're going to do today, or if it's just an activity or a homework, there will always be something for you to do. Okay, so keep that in mind. Before we get started, if I ask you to pause the video, please pause the video. And we'll be using that time for you to practice problems on your own. After the notes today, you'll continue working on the playlist, doing the must-dos first and the may-dos next. And make sure you get your homework done and bring it to next class. All right, so first pause. Go ahead and complete the warm-up day 5 unit review on page 9. Pause the video and I'll have the answers up here when you come back. All right, here are the answers to your warm-up. Remember, if it says find the 0, that's the same thing as root. And so this can also be written as 2, 0. If you have questions on this, feel free to ask next class when we see you. All right. We'll go over the homework next class as well, which is why I skipped those slides, but go ahead and open up to page 25 so we can get started with the notes. Graphing in slope-intercept form. This is our third method of graphing. Keeping in mind that our first method of graphing was TOV, table of values, and our second method of graphing was XY intercepts. Slope-intercept form uses the formula y equals mx plus b, where y, we're just going to keep as y. It is a variable, and it is what our formula is going to be equal to. Slope, or, well, gave it away. M is slope, which we've already learned. X we are going to keep as our variable x, and b is your y-intercept. Feel free to Google why it's the letter B on your own time. So, moving down to the first 6 problems. It asks us to identify the slope and y-intercept of each equation. We need to make sure that we rewrite it in slope-intercept form first. So just to remind ourselves, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Order does matter. The formula says mx plus b, so please don't write it as b plus mx. In number 1, first, is it in slope-intercept form? Yes, because it's y equals mx plus b. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to write m equals and b equals. M is always the number in front of x, and b is always your constant. So in this case, your slope, your m, is 2, and your b is negative 10. For number 2, is it in slope-intercept form? Yeah, for the most part, but hopefully we notice that our b is missing. So we can write plus 0 here just so we can see there actually is a y-intercept. And so for this one, my slope is negative 3, and my y-intercept is 0. For number 3, is it in slope-intercept form? No, it is not. So we need to get y by itself. In order to get y by itself, remember literal equations, how we move anything from one side to the other so we can get a variable that we're solving for by itself. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides so that my new equation is y equals negative 3x plus 5. Now we can see that our slope is negative 3 and our y-intercept is 5. All right, go ahead and pause the video and try 4, 5, and 6 on your own. Okay, so for number 4, if we were solving, oh, what am I doing? Ignore me. Okay, so if we wanted to put this in slope-intercept form, y is already by itself. So we have a negative x over 3. Remember, we're allowed to split up that denominator. So if I rewrite this in simplest form, I have y equals negative x plus 3, or negative x over 3 plus 2. So here my m is a negative 1/3. Remember that the coefficient of x up there is 1, and my b is 2. For number 5, it's not quite in slope-intercept form because we're missing the slope. So I rewrite it just so I can see the slope, and I notice that my slope is 0. And my y-intercept is 2. For number 6, we need to rearrange this guy. So we subtract x on both sides. We're left with 4y equals negative x plus 4. Now, still getting y by itself, I divide everything by 4. So my new equation is negative x over 4 plus 1, meaning that my slope is a negative 1/4, and my y-intercept is 1. Okay, before we move to the next page to graph, I want to point out to you 2 and 5. 2 and 5, they were written more unique. But one thing I want for you to realize is that number 2 is going to be going through the origin because b is 0. Number 5, thinking back to TOV here, is ahoy. Because we have a y equals equation, we have a y-intercept. So if we were to graph number 5, it would be a horizontal line. Let's move on. So we are now on page 26. And let's go through the steps for graphing before we actually complete the problems. So the steps for graphing. Step 1 is to rewrite your equation in slope-intercept form. This means that we need to get y alone, and just to remind ourselves, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Step 2, graph the y-intercept. This goes directly on the y-axis, and remember that your y-intercept is your variable b. Step 3, we're not going to be able to see everything here, but step 3, use the slope to find the next point. Remember, slope is your m. And what you're going to do is you're going to rise over run from the b, from your y-intercept. The way I remember this, for graphing purposes, to remember which one goes first, I always think alphabetically, b comes before m. So I always remember I need to do my y-intercept and then my slope. And then the last step is to draw your line, and you must have a minimum of 2 points to make a line, just as a reminder. So if you have your B and you have your M graphed properly, you'll be good to go. All right, so let's go ahead and apply these steps to number 1. So first thing, is it in slope-intercept form? It is. Y equals mx plus b. We're good to go. So I'm going to actually write down my slope, which I notice is 2/3, and my b, which I notice is 2. So I'm now on to step 2. I need to graph my y-intercept first. If 2 is your y-intercept, remember that that means it's going on the y-axis at 2. So I'm going to actually plot that right there. Now for step 3, it asks me to rise over run from my b. So I'm rising 2 and I'm running 3 right here. So just because you can't actually see what I'm doing, I rose 2. If this wants to listen to me, I rose 2 and then I ran 3. Now, using a ruler, I know you're at home, you can find a straight edge somewhere, I'm sure, if you don't have a ruler. Using a ruler, please connect your points. And there you have it, friends. You've graphed using slope-intercept form. So for number 2, going through those steps again. Is it in slope-intercept form? Not quite, because remember mx needs to come first. So y equals negative 5x plus 4. My slope and my y-intercept. My slope is negative 5. My y-intercept is 4. Starting with our b, we're going to graph up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now our slope. I have a negative 5. How can I make negative 5 into a fraction so I can do rise over run? I put it over 1. So you have 2 options here. Remember that this is either a negative 5 over 1 or it's a 5 over negative 1. They are not both negative because a negative over a negative is a positive. So in this case, we're going to choose the negative 5 over 1 option because if we chose the other option, it would take us off the graph. So I'm going to fall 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, run negative 1. So I am brought right here to this point, connecting your points with a ruler. Oh gosh. All right, my students would call Hazo on me. Hold on. There we go. Goodness gracious, Mrs. Hayes. So I go down 5, I run 1, it's a positive 1, so it needs to go to the right. Don't do what I do. Okay. I'm on a snow day too, don't forget. Alrighty guys, let's go ahead and do number 3. Okay, so this is again not in slope-intercept form, so I need to rearrange it. So I subtract 3x from both sides. I have a negative y equals negative 3x plus 0. Y is still not alone, so I need to change the signs because I'm dividing by that negative. So m is 3, b is 0. So I'm starting with my y-intercept, which is right here in the origin this time. My slope again is over 1, so I rise 3, I run 1. And now we connect our points with a ruler. All right. Please pause the video, do number 4 by yourself, and then we even would like for you to do the bottom problems, numbers 1 through 6. All right, so hopefully we got that our slope is a negative 1/2, so I started at 3. And then again, you have 2 options here. It's either a negative 1 over 2 or a 1 over negative 2. I'm going to show both options. So rising 1, running negative 2, or falling 1, running positive 2. Regardless which option you chose, you should still be getting the exact same graph that I just graphed. Now for the problems on the bottom. We asked you to not rearrange the problem and choose the best method of graphing. Remember that if you have a Hoy or a Vux, that's when you're going to want to use table of values, because then all of your x values are the same number or all of your y values are the same number. So for number 4, you should have gotten TOV. For everything else, if it's an xy intercept form, use xy intercepts. If it's in slope intercept form, use slope intercept. Our goal for you is to realize that whichever way it's written is your best method of graphing to save you time. All right, so that concludes the notes. Please go back to that playlist, continue working on those must-dos and may-dos, have it ready for us when we see you next class. Have an awesome rest of your snow day.